Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a This Is Not a Top 10 episode. And if you've been following my channel, you know that the whole point of this series is that I was sick and tired of seeing these influencer, YouTubers putting out these top 10 lists over and over and over and over again. And it's pretty much a, twist on the same theme. It would just be the same list, but kind of a little bit of a twist, and they would just put out these top 10 lists every single day. And so my whole point with this series was that I wanted to make a series that encompassed individual notes and focused on individual notes, but I wanted to do it my way. And that's kind of what this channel is basically all about. If you follow me, the whole point of this channel is to say whatever I feel about a fragrance, good, bad, or indifferent. I want to have the moxie and the intestinal fortitude to say something good when everyone's bashing a fragrance, if that's how I feel. And I want to be able to say bad things about a perfume, even if the whole crowd is, yelling how great of a fragrance it is. And I've found that a lot of the hyped fragrances are fragrances that actually don't sit well with me. I end up not liking them. I'm someone that always kind of likes to go against the stream. There's an old quote that has always stuck with me, and it says, if you ever find yourself with the majority, with the crowd, you really need to kind of take a step back and reassess your position, because you're probably missing something. There is some wisdom in crowds, there's some truth to that, but on the other side of the coin, when it comes to an art form, and I consider perfume an art form, I don't want to be with the crowds. I usually like my perfumes to be daring and different and challenging, and have a lot of transitions. And so nowadays, people give a fragrance 2 seconds when they spray it on their skin, and they judge it and move on. And I like to experience the whole fragrance and break it down. It's one of the finest hobbies that I think a person can have. So the note that we're going to focus on for this episode of This Is Not a Top 10 is going to be on the note of coffee. Now, I've done a couple of these lately. I just recently uploaded 2 videos on the note of musk. And I split it up into 2 videos because one of the videos focused on real musk, which is very rare and hard to find nowadays. And the second focused on synthetic musk, which is what you're going to get in 99.99% of the perfumes that you'll find. You really have to kind of hunt out the brands that use the real musk. And it's usually the indie artisanal brands, Bortnikoff, Areej, Dore, Ensar, Oud, that kind of stuff. And you know that most of my not a top 10 videos are very, very long, okay? So the real musk video was actually just worked out to where it ended up being a real top 10. Now, after the fact, I remembered that there was a Bortnikoff fragrance that had real musk that I left out, Chypre du Nord, so it could have ended up being a top 11, but a lot of these videos are extremely long. This is actually going to be a top 15 with some honorable mentions. So, it still fits into the framework of I can make these videos longer if I would like to and encompass more fragrances because I'm not playing to the algorithm like other YouTubers. And, but I noticed that I actually don't have a lot of fragrances with the note of coffee in them. And the thing about coffee and perfumes is it can kind of go a couple ways. The most common way that you'll see a perfumer add coffee to a fragrance is when they're doing this gourmand-like creation. And for those of you that don't know, a gourmand is basically a perfume that is supposed to have some sort of edible note in there. And there's all different types of gourmands. I normally despise gourmands. And there's a couple that I'll talk about here that are great examples of a type of gourmand that I despise. However, this video is filled with gourmands that add this syrupy, sweeter, almost really does have this edible like facet that I actually do like. However, my favorite type of coffee fragrances tend to be the ones that don't go down the common path of just adding coffee to it so that it makes the fragrance more round and syrupy and sweet. I like it when it adds this earthy aroma. Coffee can be a very, I think, intricate and detailed note. Very similar to how tobacco can be a very interesting and detailed note. And it just seems like there's layers and layers and layers of tobacco. And many people go the same route nowadays with tobacco fragrances. You get a lot of sweet, syrupy, honey tobaccos, which I think has a place, and I like some of those. My favorite type of tobaccos are the ones where they're dry and green and earthy, crinkly tobacco. Very fine tobacco, but I don't like it to be sweet a lot of times. And so that's kind of the interesting little connection between these notes. I'm always reminded a little bit of the way I think some perfumers try to use tobacco, because many times they try to make coffee very sweet in their fragrances, this liqueur-like sweetness, and there are actually hints of tobacco inside of coffee, but it's a note that when it's done on the very sweet, modern gourmand side, I normally don't like, and that's probably why I don't have very many coffee fragrances in my collection. But we are going to start with scent of the day before we really hop into it. And this is the very first time I've worn this, and this is thanks to a good friend of the channel. Again, if you've been following the channel and you've seen some of my recent unboxings, you'll know that our good friend Eddie, he goes by the YouTube name Jonathan B. Swift. He just left a hilarious comment on my last video. You should check that out. But Senator Eddie, as I call him now, he has been promoted to senatorial rank on Channel Ram. Excuse me, and he sent me this. This is a fragrance from a house that I've actually never smelled before. This is the first time I've worn anything from the house, and it's the first time I've ever worn this fragrance. And it's from the house of Olivier Durbano. Olivier Durbano. And this fragrance is called Black Tourmaline. So Black Tourmaline came out in 2007. Apparently it's still available, but I've actually never heard anyone talk about this. I've had some people tell me that way back in the day, like, 15 years ago, this fragrance was hyped on Fragcom for a bit, and then, excuse me, within the last decade or so, it just completely fell off. Hardly anyone talks about it anymore. And I'm going to change that, because this is a very well-made, smoky, spicy, incensey fragrance with a little touch of an oud backbone. And I'm not going to tell you to go run out and buy it right this second, but I will tell you that if you are in the market for an incense fragrance, if frankincense is kind of your thing lately, if you've been into the smokier type fragrances, this is one to put on the list that I didn't even know was on the list. This was far off my radar. Never even heard of this house, to be honest with you. Or if I did, I just straight overlooked them and they never stuck. But I wore this to work today. There's this beautiful spiciness as it starts. I really like the peppery, cuminy, coriander. This is a ballsy opening. Some people might not like this, but I wore it to work. It was beautiful. It was actually 80 degrees here in Texas in February today. And this worked just fine because I was in the office, of course, where it's climate controlled. But this was a beautiful wear, good first wear, and actually good enough that I'm interested in maybe trying to explore more from the house. But I really enjoyed it. The oud is, it's not super oudy. It's more, I think, of a backbone. The star of the show for me is kind of the spices and that smoky. And this incense, by the way, doesn't feel like a, lemony, unburnt incense, like you're smelling it picked straight from the tree, right? They wound the tree, and then once the tree kind of gives off that incense, they end up rounding it off. They look like tears. They call them tears that they kind of pluck from the trees after the trees are wounded. So it doesn't smell like that lemony incense that isn't burnt. This smells like actual burning, incense that's been lit and is actually burning into the air. Beautiful. Very nice. But again, these type of fragrances are easy sells for me. Leathers and incense are easy sells. So just keep that in mind. You may get this and not like it as much as I do, but if you like smoky, spicy, woody, earthy, resinous type fragrances, this is definitely one to check out. Okay, so the couple honorable mentions before we get into the list. 2 from the House of Prin Lomros that are going to make an appearance on my channel very soon at some point. I've been threatening to talk about these 2 fragrances for a long time. I did a fragrance review from the House of Prin in 2022, and it was called Anthamara. And I did not really care for Anthamara. It reminded me a little bit of a Areej Dore fragrance, which I also really didn't care for, which is very rare for me, which makes me want to kind of try it again and think, maybe I kind of missed something, because most of his fragrances I absolutely love. But Anthamara, you can go check out my review, but it's the only one from the brand that I've talked about on the channel, but these two are going to get talked about at some point soon, I hope. This one's called Okachal. And Okachal, and by the way, special shout out to my friend Lee from Fragnanimous.com. This is not sponsored or anything, but just kind of a little tip. If you're looking for fragrances like Prin, Bortnikoff's, which by the way, Bortnikoff just discontinued a ton of his fragrances, shocking. Areej Dore, Meleg, those kind of indie houses, Fragnanimous.com, if you're within the US, is what I use for those type of fragrances. Again, he sent me these little samples like this before just as a friend, he's someone that I trust. You have to have kind of your core group of people that you trust, and when I'm looking for indie fragrances, he's who I go to. Now, if you're outside of the US, it's unfortunate because you won't be able to use him, but if you're inside of the US, he's very trustworthy. He's the type of person that I like kind of passing his info out, because he's someone I know will take good care of you if you end up using him. So this came from him. He gave me this as a little freebie. I still haven't talked about it on the channel yet. Okachal is one, and this is basically the spicy floral. It's supposed to be the spicy floral-like fragrance that I think has real Siberian deer musk. This could have been on the real deer musk list from the other day as well. New Zealand ambergris, osmanthus, petitgrain, blackcurrant, false sandalwood, yuzu, orris butter, fenugreek, violet leaf. I mean, his fragrances are like just a list of ingredients, notes, and they're never in a period. He just kind of throws the notes at you. Mimosa absolute, frankincense, coffee absolute, so that's why Okachal is on the list. Chamomile, Kimoon tea, which I don't know what type of tea that is. May rose absolute, spikenard, which is a note that usually scares me. Fucus absolute, cacao absolute, cumin, nutmeg, nagamata, oak moss, birch tar, cade juniper, and tobacco. What a list. So Okachal I'll hopefully get to talk about on the channel soon. And the other Prin is called Varuk. And Varuk's the one I'm probably most excited about because this is a spicy animalic fragrance with castoreum. And castoreum is one of my favorite animalic notes. Antaeus is probably my favorite fragrance, if not my favorite, right up there with Bel Ami for my two favorite fragrances of all time. And this is supposed to be this furry, spicy, animalic take on like a leather. And inside of it is a coffee absolute note. So, along with, again, a myriad of notes, pepper, labdanum, Thai oud, myrrh. There's a fir note in here. Yes, a real fir note with frankincense, teakwood, moss, patchouli, bay leaf, amber, pine tar, coffee absolute, all kind of notes, right? So a couple fragrances that I'm very excited to talk about on the channel. And then another honorary mention, and there is a review of this on my channel. And again, this is one that I did not like, which is very rare for me. This is Areej Dore's Oud Picante. Oud Picante opens up with this very spicy, resinous, thick, almost suffocating to me spice. It was like cumin, cardamom, cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, turmeric, just all of these spices thrown at you. And then you get the oud. There's a little bit of carrot seed, which adds a slight bit of powderiness, but there's also spikenard in here. And I remember when I reviewed Anthamara that I got a little bit of this Oud Picante vibe, and this came out first, of course. I think this influenced a lot of different indie houses, not just Prin, but I think Oud Picante also influenced some of Ensar's work and some stuff like that. My opinion, because this came first. So shout outs to Russian Adam for at least blazing the trail, even if it's not my favorite from the brand. I can appreciate, I said this in the review, but I can appreciate trying to do something different and going against the grain. That's my personality basically to a T. And you know, I like the fact that he actually tried to do something different. Even if I don't actually like the fragrance, I can appreciate that. You know, I can appreciate the intestinal fortitude of doing something different, and this is different. Unless you've smelled something like Ensar Oud's EO number 2, or I mentioned Anthamara, you've probably never smelled a spicy fragrance that opens quite like this. It's actually very, to me, it was very unpleasant. I did not like that opening at all. As it dried down, I appreciated it more. Again, coffee comes in the mid with tobacco, two notes that I mentioned kind of play in the same area of the sandbox, if you will. A Papanax, Bengali sandalwood, Muhuhu wood, Costus fossilized amber, and labdanum in the base. So there is a review on my channel, but it's not too, it's not too a glowing review, I'll tell you that. I struggled with Oud Picante. And then another couple fragrances that I plan on talking about on the channel very soon, and this is kind of why they're honorary mentions. Haven't talked about them before, but one is Thierry Mugler's Amen Ultra Zest, and this is thanks to my brother Rich Mitch from across the pond. Ultra Zest is supposed to be this sweet, fruity take on this mint, orange, tangerine, ginger. There's a coffee note again, because even though this is a, almost like a orange creamsicle, if you will, it almost smells like an orange creamsicle. It has the Amen DNA, and inside of the Amen DNA is coffee. So you're going to find a lot of Amen fragrances on this list. So there's coffee, cinnamon, black pepper, vanilla, tonka, and patchouli. And again, this will either show up as kind of an individual, just early impression, because I don't have a bottle. This is all I have. It's rare and discontinued now. And I just dropped it. And so I don't have a bottle. So this will either show up on a early impression video, or maybe in one of the live streams where I blind sniff stuff, or sniff it for, kind of like an early impression. And the other Thierry Mugler that is in the honorary mention is Pure Wood. And Pure Wood came out in 2014. It's also discontinued, just like Ultra Zest is. And Pure Wood is oak, coffee, vanilla, patchouli, and cypress. So another one that you'll get a video on at some point or another. And then I mentioned an example of a gourmand fragrance that is done in a way that I actually don't like, that has coffee in it. And I have a review of this, or an early impression video of this on the channel, and it's the only thing from the brand I've smelled. It actually really put me off from the brand. It was done by Nathalie Feisthauer, who, to be fair, most of her work is very out and out synthetic. She makes no qualms about the fact that she loves synthetics. There's nothing wrong with synthetics when it's done right. To me, this is an example of a synthetic done wrong, horribly wrong. This is Astrophil and Stella's Paris Shetty. So I guess terrible or kind of cool name, depending on which side of the tracks you're looking at this from. Came out in 2021, and I really did not like this. Super sweet, super, it almost smelled, it gave me the biggest headache. I remember that. There was this, yes, it's a gourmand. The sweetness was out of this world, though I couldn't stand it. It had Italian bergamot, and I looked at the note listing and I thought, you know what? Maybe this will be, since this is a niche house, these are not cheap, these Astrophil and Stella. Maybe since this is a niche house, this will be something I can stomach. And the very first time I smelled it, I wore it as my scent of the day, and what a mistake that was. Italian bergamot, Guatemala cardamom, Peruvian pink pepper, Chinese cassia leaf, coffee absolute, cacao absolute, lily of the valley, hedione, iris, heliotrope, Spanish cistus absolute, and broxin. Huge throw on this fragrance. Tonka bean absolute, benzoin, vanilla, and ambrette. And so the note listing kind of tricked me. I was like, okay, maybe I'll give this a try. Maybe this is a gourmand I will like. No, in fact, this put me off even from trying others from the brand. I still have about 6 or 7 others from Astrophil and Stella that I've still never smelled, just out of fear of what they're going to be like. So I will get around to either doing them in a live stream or doing some early impressions on that brand at some point as well. And then this is sent to me by my good friend Shiva. If you're watching, I very much appreciate it, brother. He sent me a couple very generous decants. This is of a very expensive limited edition fragrance from the house of Thomas DeMonico. Only 1,400 bottles were made, I think, worldwide. And this is called Raw Gold. So Raw Gold has gotten a lot of hype in the YouTube community, which scares me, to be honest with you. But this is a 2020 release, And apparently, I don't know if they're still slowly releasing bottles or what, but it says it's still available for purchase. So it's liqueur, coffee, and pepper in the top with lipstick, leather, and suede. So the note listing really gets me interested, with a base of oak, civet, patchouli, saffron, leather, honey, and cigar note, a cigar note. So the note listing is like, man, I think this is going to potentially be amazing. But the fact that it's so hyped in the community worries me. Usually that's a sign that I won't like something, but we will very much see. So Raw Gold by Thomas DeMonico has a coffee note in the top. Excuse me whilst I hydrate. Okay, next on the list is this one I actually do have a review on, but I didn't want to put it in the top 15, and it's Zoologist Rhinoceros. So I actually didn't care for this fragrance as much. Apparently, this is the second version, version 2.0. I have version 1 from 2014, and interestingly enough, version 1 was done by a completely different perfumer. So the original Rhinoceros was done by Paul Killer, and the new one is done by Prin Lomros, and I did not care for the new one, just like I did not care for Prin's Anthamar, which really kind of makes me worry about these two Prins I talked about earlier, Okachal and Varuk, but I will try them out and let you know my thoughts. But the new Rhinoceros has a coffee note in the top. The old Rhinoceros did not have a coffee note in it at all. It's actually one of the additions to the new Rhinoceros. And I'm sure there were other things that were added, taken out. Apparently there was Immortel in the original. There's no Immortel in here. So it's almost like it's, even though it's still called Rhinoceros, it's almost like it's not just a reformulation. It's like a whole new reworking of the fragrance. And since I have a couple precious drops of the original, one of these days I will do a comparison video between the two for you guys. So Rhinoceros, though, does have to be in the honorable mentions. Now here's a brand that I almost never talk about. And this is another one where I've got probably 15 of their little samples like this. I don't think I've ever mentioned them on the channel once. So the house is called Jacques Zalti. Jacques Zalti. And this particular fragrance is called, it's from the Parfums de Havane line, and it's called Me Gusta. So this came out in 2019. And this house is, again, one no one talks about. I don't know anything about it. Zero. Never smelled any of their fragrances. Again, I've got a thing of, just samples like this that someone sent me that I just never got around to yet. But this is coffee, citrus notes, amyris, jasmine, carnation seed, black pepper, vanilla, vetiver, amber, cedarwood, and tonka. So not the most outrageous note listing, but I'll be interested to see what the quality of this house is like. I don't have very high ingredients, but they are made in Italy. So, I do like Italian perfumery. So we'll see how that turns out. If it actually is just made in Italy or what the style's like. I have no clue who the perfumer is or anything like that. And finally, I know I've said these are all honorable mentions. This is a true honorable mention. And if I added this to the list, honestly, it might even be number 1, but I can't add it to the list because it doesn't have a coffee note. It has a coffee blossom note. So most people don't realize coffee actually grows little white blossom flowers on it. This has a coffee blossom note. So I thought it was cool enough to add it to the list, but I couldn't in good conscience put Tigerlust at the top of the list. Although I think if I had to rank it, I think it honestly at this point in time would be at the top just because of the quality. This is one of the best Ensars I've ever smelled. It's my taste is what it really is. The quality is always there with Ensar. It's just sometimes some of the stuff he does doesn't appeal to my taste. This one does. This is straight up animalic, woody, spicy. There's multiple types of oud in here. There's Chinese oud, Sri Lankan oud, and Indonesian oud. There's castoreum. Already you're speaking to my heart. Oud and castoreum. There's tobacco. There's Timor sandalwood. There is osmanthus, which I love osmanthus. Blackcurrant, so there's a little bit of fruitiness. So it's like blackcurrant, fruitiness from the blackcurrant and fruitiness from the osmanthus, which usually gives off this like nectarine, peachy, leathery type vibe. There's real ambergris, frangipani, orris root, civet, which blends with the castoreum beautifully here, and Sichuan pepper. What a fragrance. I actually tried to buy a full bottle of this before I knew what the price of Tigerlust Pure Parfum was. As soon as I saw the price, I was like, no. If I'm going to spend that much money, I'm going to try to buy a bottle of Metallica. If I'm going to spend $1,000, I want a bottle of Guerlain's Metallica. If only I could find it for $1,000. Okay, so that's the honorable mention. So let's get into this top 15. So number 15, and it kind of has to be at number 15 for me. It's the worst quality fragrance on this list. Actually, I probably should sell it off. Maybe I'll review it and sell it because it doesn't really deserve deserve to even belong in my collection anymore. I sold off Mancera Cedrat Boisé and a couple other things that I thought just were out of place. 24, Scent Story, Rise of the Superb, or something stupid like that. I've sold some stuff off recently, which I usually don't do, but I need to make room. And some of this stuff that just doesn't belong, I think it's smart to kind of start selling it just to make room, if anything else. And this is called Halloween Man X. Now, this is another one that kind of got hyped over the last 3 years or so. Halloween Man X came out in 2019, and it's not a bad fragrance. It's just, if you've kind of smelled the way that the sweetness is done in a fragrance like this. So this is another one that I don't show on the channel very much because it's just not my taste anymore. But if you know that the way that the sweetness is done in Salvatore Ferragamo's Uomo, and this is a tester bottle, so I don't have that, I don't have the little weird cap that the regular ones have, this kind of built-in wonky sprayer. And this is actually a sweet gourmand. This smells like there could be coffee in here, but there's not. There's actually a tiramisu note in here. And the reason I bring this up is if you know the way that the sweetness acts in Salvatore Ferragamo's Uomo, you'll kind of have an idea of the way it acts in Halloween Man X. But what they've done is they basically added a couple things. So they added a whiskey note and a roasted coffee note. And on that merit, those notes with this mineralic aspect and some classy lavender in this designer tonka bean dry down with a little bit of frankincense. It's not a bad fragrance. It's just the quality of this is probably the lowest I think it's the lowest on the entire list. Is it a bad fragrance? No, I think it's a great starter fragrance for somebody that, wants to start getting into sweet gourmand like perfumes. They use the, roasted coffee note here, exactly like I mentioned early in the video, how many perfumers nowadays use it to kind of add this syrupy, sweet, aspect. It's like adding coffee with 4 scoops of sugar and 4 pumps of that sweetener that they do, and then 4 dollops of half and half or something, or pure cream. It's that kind of sweetness. And so if that's your thing, you may absolutely love this. For me, it's just too sweet now, and I find sweet fragrances to come across as very juvenile. When I think of what a grown, sophisticated man should smell like, I think of things like Guerlain Derby, or Antaeus, or Polo Green, or, something like that. Those are the fragrances that come to mind when I think of a sophisticated, mature man, something that doesn't have this modern bubblegum sweetness to it. And many of these sweet gourmands that you smell will. This is one. So Halloween Man X, number 15 on the list. Number 14. Number 14 is actually a fragrance that I do not have a full bottle of, but there is a review on the channel. And again, this is thanks to my perfume god person. He sent me the entire sample set of the first collection from Spirit of Dubai. And I really enjoyed going through these. I have videos on all of them on the channel, but I've never smelled the new one that came out last year. They put a new one out from the line. I forget what it was called, but they added it to the first edition line, like after the fact. And they also now put out a second collection, which I've never smelled anything from the second collection. Boz, if I had to blind buy one though, from feedback from people I know, it would be Boz. Jonathan, 1970, raves about Boz. And so that's one that I really, really want to, either add to the collection or at least smell one day. But this one's called Fakhama. And Fakhama comes in the black. And you can see, actually, I destroyed this. This was the first one I tried to try. And I was like, how do you get this damn thing open? And sure enough, all you have to do is take the... but someone told me that the scroll comes off, and I didn't realize you could just kind of slide it off. It comes off, and this kind of turns into a scroll, and you can read about the fragrance. I'm not going to take it off because it's a nightmare. But anyways, Fakhama comes in at number 14. It's basically this. All of the Spirit of Dubai fragrances are takes on the Middle Eastern style of Orientals. So they all have a million notes, kind of like Roja Dove. This is a woody Oriental that I remember kind of focusing on that Rose Oud combo. So from memory, I remember the, jammy, very fruity Bulgarian rose note. And along with that Bulgarian rose, you get multiple different types of rose and this dried fruit. So Middle Eastern dried fruits with coffee, okay? And the coffee in the top, it's there kind of, I think, as a secondary note, but I started to get much more into the dry down from Fakhama a lot faster. There's 2 other fragrances from the Spirit of Dubai that use coffee that are higher on the list because coffee features more of a prominent note. Here, it's more of an opening note. And then this goes down into this caramelly, patchouli, patchoulol, cypriol thing that they do. And I like the fragrance. It's too sweet for me is the thing. Again, that sweetness kind of comes back. I like the fragrance though. If you like big synthetic, I tested a huge fragrance that's kind of in this mold from the house of Elisir recently called Desired on my last live stream. If you like those kind of fragrances, you can smell it for 48 hours, that kind of thing. Fakhama should definitely be on the list. I enjoyed it. But the reason it isn't higher is coffee plays more of a role in the top, not the full evolution of the perfume, which the next ones will. They'll be really deeper into the composition than the coffee is in Fakhama. Okay, next on the list we've got number 13, and number 13 is a sample. And it's actually a sample that, again, I have a review on the channel on this. You can go check it out, or at least an early impression if you want to call it that, because I don't own a bottle of this. But if you made me buy one more from the house of Zoologist, this would be on the short list. This would be on the short list, as would Elephant, from the ones that I've tested recently. I've got videos on the channel on all of the Zoologist fragrances, except for Moth, because I have a full bottle on Moth, and I'm going to try to do a full review on that one day. But these early impressions, they're all on the channel under the live stream section where I tested them. So you got my first impressions on them. And Civet was one of the winners. This one actually ended up getting its own video. Civet was a fragrance that reminded me a little bit of... It was kind of one of those fragrances that like punched above its weight class, if you will, because it reminded me of some very expensive perfumes. If you've ever smelled Roja's Chypre Extraordinaire, which I just did a review on Chypre Extraordinaire recently, or if you've ever smelled this, and this is actually a fragrance from Darren Allen, and this was very kindly sent to me by Rachel. Thank you, Rachel. This is Chypre number 1. Darren Allen's Chypre number 1. They really share, to me, they share a lot in common for whatever reason, along with Chypre Extraordinaire. I think these two are both better than Chypre Extraordinaire. Chypre Extraordinaire used to be a 1,750 pound fragrance. Roja Dove has since reduced the price to 750 pounds. Still outrageous though. And this $160 fragrance or whatever Zoologist charges, 180 for 100 mils, just blows it out of the water. I would take this over, I would take Civet over Chypre Extraordinaire any day of the week. And so then it kind of turns into a battle between these two. And honestly, I don't like either of them enough for a full bottle. But if you're a Chypre lover, if you like Mitsuko, and again, I'm just using that as an example because it's a classic Chypre that many people can gravitate to. It's probably the greatest perfume of all time as far as technicality and precision. And, you know, for me, Mitsuko is like the gold standard, right? So that's why I bring it up. Not saying that Civet smells exactly like Mitsuko, but it'll get you in the ballpark, right? So if you're a Chypre lover, this is one to definitely put on your list. It's not what you would think. If you're expecting Koros or Furyo, this is completely different, okay? So Civet's bergamot, black pepper, lemon, orange, spices, and tarragon. Tarragon's one of my secret weapon notes. And then the heart is carnation, frangipani, heliotrope, hyacinth, linden blossom, tuberose, and ylang ylang. Big floral heart, but it's very well blended. And a base of balsam, civet coffee, frankincense, labdanum, musk, oak moss, resins, Russian leather, vanilla, vetiver, and woods. Fantastic creation. I think probably the best value for money out of the three that I kind of lumped together. Darren Allen's Chypre #1, Civet, and Chypre Extraordinaire. I think the value for money of Civet is through the roof. So that was number 13. Number 12. Now we're getting into, now by the way, I was remiss in mentioning this earlier, but all of these are great fragrances. I think the weakest one again is Halloween Man X, but whether I put something at 11, 9, 8, 1, 5, they're all fantastic coffee fragrances. These are just kind of my opinion on what I think is the best executed coffee note that I've smelled in perfumery, okay? And so that's kind of how I rank them, but don't think because, oh, this one's at 12, it's no good. No, not true at all. I think everything on this list is a good fragrance. So number 12 is a creation by kind of a perfumer who can be a little bit divisive. He has some all-time great hits. He created stuff like Mousse Ravageur by Frederic Malle and Dante Bras, Frederic Malle. And he also created this, which is called Rochas Man. His name is Maurice Roussel. So he created Rochas Man, and then a couple years later, he created a fragrance for Bond Number 9, which is a very expensive niche house called New Harlem. And New Harlem is supposed to smell like what they call a New York breakfast. So it's supposed to have this pancakes and syrup, gourmand, coffee feel, right? This does all that. And what's interesting is normally it's the niche houses that put out a fragrance, and then the designers kind of copy, because the niche houses are where people kind of try to do different things. This came out in 1999. Bond Number 9 New Harlem came out in 2003. So it was years later Bond Number 9 New Harlem came out. Now, Bond Number 9 New Harlem was discontinued. Same perfumer. Again, same perfumer. They get compared to each other a lot. Same perfumer. And this is a fragrance that came out a couple years prior to New Harlem, and I've never smelled New Harlem is the thing, so I would love a comparison video, or I would love to sniff it one day. But for me, New Harlem is discontinued, and now they've re-released it. I don't know if the new re-release is as good. Again, I've never sniffed either version, but the re-release is like $300, right? In usual Bond Number 9 fashion, it's not cheap. It's expensive. This you can get at discounters for like $30, or you could recently. I don't know what the prices are now, but I think I got this 100 ml for $30, somewhere around there. And for $30, this is a great buy of a gourmand. Forget about the weird bottle, which you can use your imagination on. Some people say lava lamp, some people say spaceship, some people say something else. But this is bergamot. There's green touches in here. There's lavender. There's jasmine. There's lily of the valley. There's musk, and there's raspberry in the heart. The base is amber, coffee, sandalwood, vanilla, and patchouli. And the coffee note here is very prevalent. And there's another fragrance that was a gourmand for men that used a coffee note that came out a couple years before this and really revolutionized, I think, the gourmand game. And I think this was kind of taking notes, if you will, from the one we're going to talk about here very soon. But Rochas Man is, I think, very underrated if you like this type of perfumery. You know, it's probably best in the very cold weather. And the thing about Maurice Roussel, and the reason that I say he's a divisive perfumer, is that he uses these white musks a lot. Kind of like Francis Kirkjohn uses white musks a lot. But Maurice Roussel and Francis Kirkjohn have a little different style. And if you know the way that Maurice Roussel uses these white musks, some people absolutely love them, adore the way he uses them. And some people are starting to find them kind of boring. He did a fragrance for Frederic Malle called Uncut Gem, and that did not get very good reviews. And part of it is that use of that white musk that he uses. So, but Rochas Man, definitely one to put on the to sniff list, and it's a cheapie as far as I know. Okay, next on the list, we have a fragrance from Spirit of Dubai again at number 11. And again, this is higher up on the list because coffee plays a bigger role here to me. And this is called Turath. And I didn't destroy the bow this time. So this is called Turath. Turath is, I don't know who the perfumer is of these Spirit of Dubais, by the way. I think the brand owner or founder claims he's the perfumer. I don't know. But this one also has a coffee note in the top, in the top notes, but it seems to blend deeper into the dry down. It's not as focused, I would say, on that rose oud saffron traditional combination. The Fakhama had a lot of elements of gourmand elements and stuff like that, kind of like the gourmand of the bunch, if you will. This is more my taste. There's another one which I would probably buy over Turath, but this is a very complex fragrance. There's a lot of notes, and to me, the way that the coffee kind of really into the dry down, you can smell it more with the oud here, and the cypriol is beautiful in here. The leather, the smoke, the frankincense. I like the way that this one is done. This is one of the, Spirit of Dubai fragrances that I would, if money was no issue, I would own it, But since you have to prioritize what you buy, I never went for a full bottle of Turath, but I do like this more than Fakhama. Okay, so that was Turath at number 11. All right, number 10. Now we're getting into some of the real big hitters because we have one of the most influential gourmands for men ever. This is from 1996. This is Thierry Mugler's Amen. Now, this is an older bottle that actually says Angel Men, but any version you can get that says Thierry Mugler right here instead of Mugler, you're good. That's it. Just go for the Thierry Mugler one is my advice. Amen to me is one of my favorite, designer fragrances ever. I've got multiple bottles of this, and the older bottles actually will kind of change colors. You can see they start to look kind of, I don't know, green. Sometimes the juice looks blue. Sometimes it looks green. Don't worry about it. This stuff, I feel like would last a nuclear apocalypse because there's so many, it just feels like a synthetic creation, but I love it. It's so ballsy. Jacques Huclier did Amen, whereas it was Olivier Crest that did the original Angel. This is bergamot, coriander, lavender, peppermint, honey, jasmine, caramel, lily of the valley, patchouli, cedarwood, amber, benzoin, coffee, musk, sandalwood, styrax, tonka bean, and vanilla. Some people say they get this tar-like note, and I know what they mean. There is a tar like feel to the perfume. It's huge. This is a huge fragrance. The patchouli is amazing in here. I love this stuff. One of the few sweet fragrances I can say I really, really love. The original Amen. Now, it spawned a ton of flankers. I mentioned Pure Zest, or Ultra Zest. I mentioned Pure Wood earlier, which are two we'll talk about on the channel at some point very soon. And a couple that I have full bottles of. At number 9, we have Pure Malt. And Pure Malt is, unfortunately, I have no idea why, but Pure Malt, apparently, it's either discontinued or I hear the new version that L'Oreal is marketing under just the regular Mugler moniker, not the older Thierry Mugler, has lost, its edge. That's not the one that you want to go for. Go for the one with the Thierry Mugler if you care about that stuff. Now, I'm not saying if you have a bottle of Amen Pure Malt that says Mugler. It's not good. I'm just saying I heard that there have been some tweaks. Some of the bean counters for L'Oreal have gone in there and maybe kind of changed the formula a little bit. I've never smelled it myself, so I can't comment, but just rumors in the community, okay? So Amen Pure Malt came out in 2009, and the reason that this, to me, beats the regular Amen when we're doing a coffee countdown is that this has coffee absolute. And usually the absolute is a thicker, denser, deeper type smell. So here you have the Amen DNA with the patchouli and the woods, the musks, but they've added a couple things. They've added the note of peat, whiskey, malt CO2, and they've made the coffee absolute. And because the peat, or the malt, if you will, the peat and the malt give it this earthiness to it. And the coffee used here, since it's coffee absolute instead of just coffee, it also gives it this deeper, darker, richer type feel. This is a beautiful creation. I absolutely love it. One of my favorite boozy fragrances out there. I love a good liqueur fragrance, and this is one of the best. It's a shame that it's either been discontinued or reformulated to the point where it's probably not going for the modern. Now this one, there's no question about it, it's discontinued, and it is also an Amen flanker, and it's coming in at number 8. This is Thierry Mugler. This is called A Taste of Fragrance, but some people call this Pure Chili. You might see it referred to as Pure Chili, but it's actually A Taste of Fragrance is what it's officially called. It came out in 2011, and I think this is probably my favorite Amen flanker. How's that for a bold statement? This is probably my favorite overall. This is such a strong fragrance. Not in terms of like projection and scent, although it is, but I mean strong as far as composition goes. And I think what ended up happening with this is, I think his name was Oscar Pistorius, something like that. The Olympian that maybe shot his girlfriend. I can't remember. Something weird happened with him. And he was the face of the fragrance. Excuse me. So whenever he went to jail, this kind of got, I think, pushed a little bit to the back because of that. They were a little, I think, maybe, oh no, I got the hiccups now. Oh, I'm not going to be able to talk. Oh, what a terrible time to get the hiccups. Okay, sorry for the hiccups in between sentences here, but we are not stopping this video. Okay, so I think what ended up happening is that, that's going to be real annoying, that they, took him off as the face of the advertising campaign. Excuse me. But it also, I think, kind of relegated the perfume to a lesser role in the lineup. Just a theory of mine. I don't know for sure. All I know is that because A Taste of Fragrance has this chili pepper note in the top, and because it's called A Taste of Fragrance, and rumor is that Thierry Mugler actually worked with a professional chef to actually make this fragrance. There's bergamot, coriander, lavender, and peppermint in the top with that chili note. Patchouli and red pepper with cedarwood, and then coffee, musk, styrax, and tonka bean. And maybe because, the power of suggestion, because this is supposed to be a fragrance about food, a taste of fragrance, the coffee note really seems to kind of stand out. And it's a beautiful creation, though. Probably one of my favorite flankers from Amen. And definitely discontinued and hard to find. But if you're going to get a couple of them, Pure Malt, A Taste of Fragrance, and then the one coming up are probably the ones I would recommend. Okay, next on the list, we've got number 7. Number 7 on the list is a little decant that I have, and this was very kindly sent to me by Armando. Thank you, my friend. And this is called Mona di Orio Santal Nabataea. So there's the name right there. I don't know if you can see it. Santal Nabataea. And this is an amazing sandalwood. No one talks about this. this deserves more talk in the community, I'll tell you that. But Santal Nabataea is basically a creation by Frederick Dahlman, and it's this spicy, woody, peppery sandalwood that has some very interesting notes. So there's the note of black currant leaf, which the black currant leaf, I think, usually gives it this pissy-like smell, like this masculine pissy-like smell, but this is a unisex fragrance. There's dried apricot, there's oleander, there's a papanax, which is sweet myrrh, there's loam, the note of loam, with sandalwood, tonka bean, and coffee absolute. And so what it ends up turning into is basically like this woody, creamy, beautiful sandalwood. I think it's obviously mostly synthetic type sandalwood, but it's so beautifully made. And you get this sandalwood and coffee is kind of what it ends up being in the dry down. The dried apricot gives it a little bit of fruitiness with the peppery opening, but what a dry down it turns into. Beautiful sandalwood and coffee absolute. It doesn't scream. It's just very well made. And so if you're someone that likes elegant, classy fragrances, Santal Nabataea should be on the to sniff list. And I've only smelled 2 Mona di Orios. Now, Santal Nabataea and Queer, which I think it's been reformulated. I want an older bottle, but I refuse to pay the scalpers. I saw someone had a vintage bottle of Queer for like $1,000. They can get lost with that. No way am I endorsing that type of behavior. Okay, next on the list we have number 6. And number 6 is a fragrance from the house of Trussardi. And this fragrance, at one point, if you would have asked me a couple years ago, I probably would have told you this is my favorite coffee-based fragrance. I've got 2 bottles of this, thank God, because it's very hard to find. And it's a creation by Nathalie Lorson, one of my favorite perfumers. I think she's super underrated. She made this with Daphne Bugey of Firmenich. And this is called Trussardi's Inside for Man. Inside for Man. And you can see this kind of, it almost looks like this crocodile skin to me in the background. And this fragrance opens up with this freshness of Japanese yuzu and Sicilian bergamot and basil. And instantly what you end up getting once the citruses kind of take you off of the runway is you get this Italian espresso, unsweet, with tobacco. Chris from Scentland says it's like drinking an Italian espresso with a cigarette in the morning. And I know what he means. There's almost zero sweetness to the way that the coffee bean is executed here. And it dries down to this combination. If you know Nathalie Lorson, you know she's extremely, she has an obsession with creating fragrance. Excuse me, sorry about the hiccups, but I'm not stopping this video an hour in. She has a obsession with this combination of pepper and cashmere, musk, that kind of thing, cashmere wood. And in the base, there's a note of teak wood, which is a very rarely used wood note. So you get the Italian espresso, unsweet with tobacco. And then you get that classic, woody, musky, Nathalie Lorson, peppery dry down. And it's beautiful. I think this is one of the most underrated Trussardis. Probably my favorite Trussardi, only second to something like Trussardi Uomo from 1983 for men. And that's just out and out one of my favorite leathers, probably my favorite Italian leather of all time. Next on the list, we have back to the house of Thierry Mugler, and this is the one that you guys probably thought was number 1. It's not. It's number 5, and it's called Pure Coffee. So, Pure Coffee by Thierry Mugler ends up at number 5. This easily could have been number 1 if my collection wasn't bigger. And, you know, this is basically Amen with the coffee note just turned up. You know, they don't screw around with it. Just like pure leather is basically Amen with a leather note amped up. And that's all they've done. They've kept that patchouli, woody, cedar, musky, vetiver thing, and they've added coffee, a big coffee note. So coffee is actually already in Amen. They just amped it up is all that they did. And it works. The Amen DNA just works for me. And this particular flanker was actually worked on by Jacques Huclier and Christine Nagel, who's the current in-house perfumer of Hermes. She also made B-Men. Christine Nagel also worked on Thierry Mugler's B-Men. Let's see if some water will get these hiccups gone. They just came out of nowhere too. I was fine. They just came out of nowhere on me. Sorry about that. Okay, so pure coffee, number 5 for me. Number 4 is the last decant, and it's the last Spirit of Dubai fragrance we'll talk about today. And this is the one I would buy, actually. This or just the pure Oud, just the one that they just call Oud by Spirit of Dubai. I think these are the 2 best from the first collection in my edition. Again, if money was no issue, I would own them both. But this one's called Majalis. It's the red one. And Majalis is a little bit of a hack, a cheat for me, because you know what it is. It's because of my my ancestry, my where I was basically born. My family is from Jordan, and I was born in Amman, and Majalis. Again, I don't speak Arabic. It's one of the biggest regrets. My old man tried to teach me Arabic, and I just never would listen. I was just a stubborn little kid. I wish I would have learned Arabic now. One of the biggest regrets in my life. Could still obviously change that at some point, but Majalis is the name of, I believe, either like a room where people sit or like a rug where people sit on to hang out. I'm not 100% sure, but it's something like that. Either the room where, guests sit or the rug they sit on or something like that. And Majalis hits that brief perfectly for me. There is this, I just remember, because we went back once when I was 12, and I need to go back at one point soon, but I just, remember sitting in my aunt's house, and there's a lot of people around, and some people are kind of, smoking hookah, some people are eating dates, there's a smell of rose in the air, and this captures kind of this beautiful honeyed, sweet, spicy oriental with dates, but most importantly, there's this note of Arabic coffee. And if you've ever had Arabic coffee, they serve it to you in this very small cup, because Arabic coffee is extremely strong. You don't drink like a cup of Arabic coffee. You would be bouncing off the walls, literally. They serve it to you in this tiny, tiny little cup, And I love Arabic coffee because they usually make it with a lot of cardamom. And so it's unsweetened coffee with cardamom, and it's extremely strong. And, this is the fragrance that captures that. And that's why I think, for me personally, this is full bottle worthy. Now, it has the regular, Spirit of Dubai DNA with lots of, they claim Taif damask rose, elemi, peach, osmanthus, cardamom, gaiac wood, dates, clove, saffron, sandalwood, vetiver, ginger, patchouli, oud, leather, vanilla, more benzoin, sandalwood, myrrh, musk, honey, Arabic coffee. Honey is an easy sell for me as well. It's one of my other favorite notes. So this is honey and coffee, and it just has this it just sparks these positive memories of the past in my head, and also kind of a remembrance of my genealogy. It is, I think, a beautiful fragrance, full bottle worthy, but I just refuse. I won't give them the money they're asking for. It's just not, I think they're just really overpriced, unfortunately, but it's a really good fragrance. Okay, number 3 is a house that's in a little bit of turmoil right now. Right now, I know he's got some amazing stuff that's going to be coming out this year, or he's supposed to have some amazing stuff coming out this year. I know he's got a collab with his good friend Russian Adam, and this is Bortnikoff, the fragrance that we are going to talk about. And number 3 is called Lao Oud. And the reason I say they're a house in a little bit of turmoil is I learned that 2 of their fragrances, possibly 3, of my all-time favorite Bortnikoffs are discontinued. So they discontinued Oud Maximus, they discontinued Oud Monarch, and they possibly discontinued Musk Habib. And Rich Mitch actually wrote Dimitri and asked him, and he responded saying that they're having a hard time getting materials right now, so discontinue, but if in the future they ever get the materials again, maybe they'll make them again, which sounds to me like, sorry, they're discontinued, buddy. But, he didn't want to say that. I don't know. But, very disappointing to me. I love those fragrances. I wish everyone had a chance to try it. This is also, I think, one of his best works. This is called Lao Oud. And you can pause it and read the note listing there. But Lao Oud is kind of, to me, like a middle ground between Oud Monarch and Oud Maximus. Oud Maximus is more the out-and-out Oud. And Oud Monarch kind of plays this chocolate oud. This falls in the middle. It still has some of the animalics of Oud Maximus, but the coffee, and there's a little bit of cacao absolute, nowhere near as much as Oud Monarch, so it doesn't go just pure chocolate oud. It goes more coffee oud, okay? And that's the reason that this is number 3. I love this combination. There's a little bit of beeswax absolute, but it's never too sweet. And as far as I know, this is still available. But one of my favorite, I do love this stuff. One of my favorite Bortnikoff compositions, as far as my favorites to wear, and I did a ranked Bortnikoff list. I think I ranked these. You can go check that out under my ranked family portrait. There's a playlist for it. If you look through my playlist, you'll find a lot of stuff I put on playlists, either the name of the house or these videos that we're doing in the name and stuff like that. Okay, so 2 left. So one's a designer, one's an indie. Okay, the designer is number 2, and actually I really thought long and hard, and I've worn a lot of these recently to kind of make my mind up as far as my favorite coffee fragrances. And this one, just for me, the first time I wore it, I thought, you know what, this is just kind of a designer-like fragrance. It's not Gerard Anthony's greatest work, but the more I've sprayed it, the more I've worn it, the more I think my mind is being changed. I'm really digging the coffee note in the opening, and mixing it with a tea note, coffee and tea, I think is a stroke of brilliance. This is Cristobal por Homme by the house of Balenciaga. Now, this is discontinued and hard to get. I do apologize, but bottles are still available. You just have to pay more on the secondary market or eBay or something like that. This is mugwort, coffee, tea, white pepper, geranium, coriander, nutmeg, sandalwood, amber, benzoin, tobacco, and vanilla. Man, these hiccups are going to be the death of me. We're going to finish this video, though. And it dries down very ambery, benzoin-y, vanillic, a little sweet, but not too much. I think the sweetness here is much more elegant than modern sweetness. So something like Halloween Man X is an example of modern sweetness done wrong. And this is an example of the way that they used to do things, 23 years ago. Can't believe it's been 23 years. 23 years ago. And I'm a big fan of this. This is growing on me with each wear. And the coffee note in the top is absolutely beautiful. I think it's a stunning creation. Cristobal pour Homme, obviously overshadowed by Balenciaga pour Homme, but deserves some limelight. So that leaves number 1. And this is a new fragrance that has been added to my collection within the last month or so. And I wore it as my scent of the day probably a week or 2 ago. I can't remember exactly which day, but I wore it as my scent of the day. I feel like I got to know it pretty good, and I don't think there's any question that, as so far, this is the best coffee fragrance for me, my taste, that I've smelled. Now, I'll put a little asterisk here, and that there's one other coffee fragrance that I think is going to be ahead of this potentially from what I read. It's called Oud Luwak. I don't own that one. Okay, that's an Areej Dore that I don't own. This is one that I do own, and it deserves the number 1 spot. It's called Agar de Noir, and there's the note listing if you want to kind of save it and read it. But Agar de Noir for me, and one of the most beautiful presentations I think I've ever seen. Look at the wording, the script. This is the darkest juice I think I've ever sprayed on my skin. It literally looked like it gave my skin a skin tan, okay? But this fragrance opens up instantly with a little blast, a little echo, if you will, of the way Russian Adam did his ambers and resins in this. The unicorn that is Russian Oud, okay? There's a little, you're going to get a little flashbang of Russian Oud. And they both kind of share this lava-like quality that that Kafkaesque wrote about on her blog. But Agar de Noir adds this Parma violet note. And the Parma violet note in the heart really ends up mixing with this oud, which is not very animalic. See, the oud for me doesn't go super animalic. It's more like the oud even used in Russian Oud, in that you get a little bit of this chocolatey feel, but it ends up focusing on the coffee. And it's just like, for my taste and for what I've smelled, this is the type of gore. If I'm going to wear a sweeter type of, I don't think this is a gourmand, although it has coffee, so you can make the sense that, it's a gourmand because coffee's, you drink it, it's edible, it's a gourmand, period. But it doesn't smell like the gourmands you're used to smelling. This is completely different from Rochas Man and Amen and Halloween Man X. Completely different. On another level. You talk about being on another level. This is on another level for me. And this type of perfumery, I'll tell you what, there's very little anymore that gets me interested. A lot of stuff I smell, I just kind of go, eh. When once you've smelled a lot of fragrances, it's harder and harder and harder to impress you, is what it comes down to. Go watch my Xerjoff early impressions if you want kind of an idea of how hard it is to impress me nowadays. This house, Areej Dore, Bortnikoff, and houses like Ensar Oud, these are the houses that more and more have been impressing me for modern fragrances. And more, I'm either going to, houses like this, or I'm going to the past. Like yesterday, I wore this as my scent of the day. Marcsinan, version original. And one of the best dark lavender fragrances I've ever smelled. It is spicy and so 80s, right? And this is the kind of stuff that I'm gravitating towards nowadays. Vintage or indie, okay? Because $350 for a Louis Vuitton fragrance that Jacques Cavalier whips up in half an hour. Doesn't feel like there's really any work put into it. Just like feels like the same repeat of the same damn molecules LVMH is using across all of the other 10 brands that they own. You know, that's the feeling. And even while hiccuping, I feel like I deserve like a little mini rant here, you know? Like, it's frustrating, you know, seeing these prices on these niche houses, and the prices always seem to go up. They always seem to go up every year, twice a year, 3 times a year. These houses are putting their prices up. So I'm turning away from them, and I'm looking at other stuff. I'm looking at the past, okay? Looking at the past, or I'm looking at something like this, which will never be remade again. This is a one and done, you know? There is no Agar de Noir 2 so far. There is no, you know, this isn't in mass production. These materials were limited, and you can smell. I mean, for me, I think that for the real frag head, nowadays, if you're just going to go buy something, there's very few houses that can compete with the quality of something like Areej Dore and what you get value for money. And very few houses get me excited the way Areej Dore does. So that's my top 15 coffee list. Hope you've enjoyed it. Sorry we went over an hour. I wanted to keep it an hour. Hiccups got me. That and I rambled some. So I would love to know what your favorite coffee fragrances are. I know there's some I still haven't smelled yet. Like there's a Arquiste fragrance that has coffee. You guys have been pushing me to smell and stuff like that. So more will, of course, we'll talk about on the channel. But let me know what your favorites are. I'd love to hear some feedback. I'd love to learn about more coffee fragrances. If there's some on the list that are not listed, do let me know. Like the video if you can, please. It does help with the ridiculous YouTube algorithm as far as getting recommended to other frag heads who are like us. You know, the liking, the subscribing, the leaving a comment, all that does help. And I very much appreciate the support that you guys have given me. Thank you to every single one of you. I'm really proud of the little fragrance community that we have established. Sorry about the hiccups again, apologies, but maybe I should go grab some coffee. So cheers, everyone. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.